OK, time then to take a look at the papers. And with us this morning, Sunday Mirror's political editor Nigel Nelson and Annabel Denham, the Director of Communications at the Institute of Economic Affairs. Great to see you both again this morning. Nigel, why don't you kick off things for us this hour? We're going to speak to him, actually, at about 8:30. The new boss of the TUC, he says workers are ready to strike until the summer. Do you think the public are prepared for that?
Well, I mean, so far the public seem to be blaming the government rather than the strikers for what's been going on. It's the fact that the government actually won't sit down and talk to them. And as you've seen from Ed Conway's rather excellent charts, that we've sort of hit a perfect storm here. You've had a decade of real terms pay cuts, which just don't keep up with inflation. Suddenly inflation starts soaring, and that's when you get strike action. And it's very difficult to see how any of this will actually get resolved unless you can get ministers and the unions sitting around the table and thrashing out some kind of settlement. And what Paul Nowak is saying is that, according to their TUC research, that workers have lost an average of £20,000 in real terms since 2008. And now everyone's just had enough, and that's why you're seeing quite so many sectors going on strike.
OK, we'll get more on that when we speak to him in the next hour. Let's move on, Annabel, to the Times, talking about bank closures. I mean, it's interesting from personal experience. I can't remember the last time I went into a bank because I'm so used to online banking now. I can do it all on there, even pay in cheques online. And I suppose this is the sad inevitability.
You're right, Jonathan. I think we've all seen it. We've seen bank branch closures on our high streets, as well as changes in our own behaviour as we move to digital banking. Yes, so this is a story that's covered in a few newspapers today, that Britain's 5 biggest banks have closed more than half of their branches since 2015, after the number of customers who are using them has collapsed. So, of course, this is being led by customer behaviours and banks' response to that. You know, it feeds into, of course, to the changing face of our high streets, which has been accelerated by the coronavirus pandemic. Really interesting data, actually. I read last month about how we've seen many high streets survive through the pandemic, despite some stores closing, vacancy rates remaining reasonably stable, but a change of use of some of the premises, particularly from retail to cafes and restaurants and bars opening. But of course, there are concerns there. You've got a quote from Alexander Stafford, the Conservative MP, who's worried about financial inclusion, and justifiably so. So I think the government really is going to need to address the fact that we're moving towards a cashless future and find ways of giving as many people as possible access to new technologies so that they're not excluded.
OK, we're going to rattle through these stories. We're a bit short of time this morning, Nigel. So let's talk about eggs, shall we? I don't know if you've had your boiled egg this morning. People will be thinking about breakfast, of course. And this is all about free-range eggs.
Indeed, and I hope to have my free-range eggs after we've done the paper review. But apparently they're coming to an end. What it seems to have happened is that Europe has changed the rules, which means that a free-range egg is classified as coming from a hen who has spent no more than 16 weeks in a barn. I have to say, I always thought they were just pecking around outside. That was the whole point of it. But anyway, the result is the EU will no longer have this kind of 16-week margin. And to keep our farmers competitive, it means that they must follow suit. But it does seem to be a bit disappointing that if you really do go for free-range eggs, very shortly it may be that's not what you're getting.
OK, well, let's stick with the food theme, shall we, Annabel? This is quite funny, isn't it, in a way? Chips, crisps, jam and wine aren't part of my 5 a day. I mean, are some people trying to kid themselves that they are?
Well, yes, and perhaps particularly so over the festive season. I certainly have been indulging in plenty of crisps and wine. Yes, so this is research that suggests almost 1 in 10 Britons do think that the potatoes in crisps or the fruit in jam go towards that 5 a day target set by the public health bodies, the NHS. That's a surprisingly high figure, though I suppose it should be taken with a pinch of salt as it's quite a small poll, but nonetheless, analysis in that Daily Mail story suggesting that only a third of adults and 12% of teenagers in England are eating those 5 fruit and vegetables a day, and the NHS is looking at ways of addressing that, creating a new app called Smart 5 a Day that will track the amount of fruit and vegetables that people eat. And I suppose with ongoing obesity levels as they are, the NHS is going to have to think of innovative ways of tackling that, and this is one of them that seems reasonably sensible to me, so long as the cost isn't too high.
Yeah, I mean, Nigel, will people really use an app, do you think, to find out if they're... if they already think that a glass of wine is part of their one a day, do you think they're going to be clever enough to be able to use an app?
No, I think they're really in trouble, actually, on the basis of that. If you reckon chips are actually good for you. And also the 5 a day thing, I mean, surely people can count from 1 to 5. So I think it's easy enough to know when you've actually reached your 5 a day limit.
Yeah, good point. The app called Smart 5 a Day will tell users if they're eating the right portion sizes and the right foods. Nigel, Annabelle, thank you once again.